Hey there, it is now I think 2 days after I filmed and released the video that I'll be sharing in a moment, and I took it down because I woke up with anxiety and there were a number of things about the video that I didn't feel good about or that I didn't feel right about, and so I've taken a few days just to contemplate that, and I decided that I'd like to share it with you because I do think it has some value to share, and I'm going to just interject little edits throughout. I'll just highlight now that as disclaimers or just to front load. One is I've just been going through some feelings of heartbreak, and I feel that emotional tone came through. I've stepped out of my comfort zone with today's video, basically. And I did want to communicate that was part of what was coming through. A second thing is that this video is very much inspired by a conversation that I experienced with my teacher, Hendricks, who I did my coaching training with, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And she's an amazing teacher, and a lot of the ideas that I share in today's video are inspired by that conversation. And I'm going to highlight throughout the parts that she inspired, just to honor the source. Also, I'll put the link below to an amazing resource of hers, which is about the 4 pillars of integrity. You know, her tools are really foundational for the times that we're in right now, and so I definitely would encourage you to check that out. A final thing that I was uncomfortable about sharing this video with you was because I made some assumptions that were embedded in my speaking that I didn't make explicit. So if you were coming to this fresh and new, you probably wouldn't have that same assumption, and so that there might have been misrepresentation of what I actually was intending to say. An example of that is I do talk about a person who's been abused, a victim of abuse, and also abuser. And if you have been a victim of abuse, one of the assumptions that I didn't make explicit is that I really believe that if you've experienced abuse of some kind, that you need to heal from that, and that it needs to be a concerted effort and a process that you go through, whether it's through therapy or another variety of modalities that your spirit calls you to. And I think the journey of healing is very individual, and that we all need to find our own path, and that we navigate that path by listening to our own intuition about what we need and what's going to take us further ahead in our own path of healing. I did not make that explicit, but I really think that's a huge important thing to say, is I don't think abuse is healed quickly. I think it's something we really need to devote ourselves to healing over time as a committed process. Similarly, I do talk about racism and white supremacy in this video and my own take on it, but I would like to say that I believe that work of unpacking your role in racism and our racist society and white supremacy is a deeper ongoing process that needs to be facilitated by a Black, Indigenous, or person of color, and that's not my role. So even though I talk about that today, I do not see myself as a teacher on that topic. And one of the women that I mentioned in today's video, Lisa Renee Hall, who is amazing. She has an incredible Patreon community that's only $5 a month to start, and she does work unpacking unconscious bias and a lot of other work on anti-racism, and I really recommend her. She's amazing, and I also really like Trudy LeBron for that work. So I will put the links below to their work, and I definitely felt uncomfortable that I might be interpreted as teaching anti-racism, which is absolutely not the case. So anyway, those are some of my concerns, and I'll interject throughout. I definitely hope that you find value in today's video, even though it was more vulnerable for me. As my friend Peter Rubin calls it, a vulnerability hangover that I had the next day. But also it was an integrity hangover. And the part about coming into alignment and bringing the content so that I'm effectively messaging it is important. That said, today's message is not super crisp and clear. I mean, it's a difficult topic and I don't think there's any simple answers. I'm just giving you my take on it at the moment. So if you like today's video, please give it a like. I would appreciate that. I appreciate your feedback as well. Without further ado, let's get into it. You can't accommodate a bully. These are the words from my teacher, Hendricks. I'm emotional today, just about this topic and just all that's happening right now in the world. I was on a call with a bunch of other coaches from my very first coaching training that I did with Gay and Katie Hendricks of the Hendricks Institute. You know, one of the mantras that Katie said throughout the training was about love and integrity, and that love without integrity isn't love. So love with a spine. And if you think about that, if you think about moments in your life where you've been a pushover or where you haven't really stood up for yourself in the name of what was true and right, then you can see how that wasn't loving. And so having this ability to have a spine and have integrity when faced with what is not loving is so important right now. And I feel that at this time, those of us who are more healer types or light workers who tend to be much more comfortable with loving and with compassion and empathy, that more than ever we really are being asked to show up with strength and integrity and to be vocal and to take action according to what is just and what is right and what is in integrity, and to really have a spine. I'm seeing this on my personal level in my own life, in terms of situations that are coming up for me personally, and also just on the global scale with the recent insurrection and storm on the Capitol. It's an example of bullying, of dominance. And so this quote that Katie said the other day, you can't accommodate a bully. There's no working with a bully, okay? A bully is bullying. And inherent in that is a dominance and an abuse of power. And when you're dealing with someone who is abusing their power and dominating, you need to act accordingly. I'd like to share some of my thoughts on this today, and then also I will be bringing on an expert, Kate Winch, who does emotional freedom technique to help us heal our inner bully and the part of us that wants to dominate and abuse our own power, which is something that I've seen as really important. I'll also be bringing on Andrea Lee, who is a woman who was abusive with her husband, emotionally and mentally abusive, and she healed herself from her own abusive tendencies, and then now has done a PhD about this and done a lot of writing, and she's just an amazing woman. So I'm going to bring her on so she can share her stories as well. Bullying. So I love this crystal. This is a crystal I was gifted. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there we go. It's very delicate. It's a crystal cluster. And when I first got this crystal, I was like, wow, this really resonates with my essence. So I consider myself to have essential qualities of gentleness, tenderness, a real capacity for intimacy, vulnerability, and that's also woven throughout my human design, which I really think is a part of what I'm here to bring. It has people being very comfortable to open up with me and to share their stories in an intimate way and to go into deep inner healing with me, which is something that I have seen over and over and over throughout my life. Now, because I have such a capacity for receiving and being vulnerable in that way, I have been a target for abuse and people who want to dominate me and harm me. And so I've learned quite a bit about that through my life. This other crystal, so this is not a crystal, it's a rock. It's obsidian. Hopefully you can see it. Let's see if it will focus. This is an arrowhead. Obsidian arrowhead that I carry with me as a symbol of strength, as an equally important part of who I am. So if you don't know me, you probably wouldn't know this about me, but I have a really strong, fierce inner side. So an example of this was one time I was driving in Mexico, and I was with my friends, a car full of people, and a car pulled up next to us. We were just driving around a corner with a cliff, and the car pulled up and started to push me into the cliff, and the guy at the side window was basically asking us to slow down, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? I'm being driven off the road, and quickly realized, my friends in the back could see that there were men with machine guns, and basically once I realized what was happening, this fierceness takes over. So this has happened to me throughout my life at different moments. It's not a conscious thing, it just happens, it just takes over. So like immediately put my foot on the gas, was like, hasta luego, fuckers, and then I just took off and was able to like deke off the road because I kind of knew the area quite well, and outran them. So I also have a really strong inner lawyer. I got into several law schools. I almost went to law school, and if someone messes with me and I see that they are not seeing the truth, or they're trying to manipulate me in some way, or they're being unfair, then I will just download scripts of words and exactly what to say that defends the truth and defends justice from my perspective, and it's quite strong. So I have a really strong protective side of me that is protective of truth, protective of justice, and who, you do not want to meet this part of me. I really hope you never do. And it's been hard for me to have this part. Like I, at some level, have wanted to shy away from this part because I do feel more identified with the more loving, compassionate qualities. But again, love without integrity isn't love. Love without truth isn't just. And so I think what I got from this recent call with Katie Hendricks, who I'm so grateful to as a mentor, is just this foundation of truth and justice and integrity right now that we all really need to be emphasizing for ourselves in today's current climate. This is something that Katie Hendricks spoke about on the call, was just that because we've experienced basically gaslighting for 4 years with Trump administration, that has actually had a ripple effect of causing us to have a warped sense of what is true and what is not true, what is real and what is not real. And I think that's also compounded by Facebook and fake news and just the media at this time. So I did want to give credit there to Katie. Having Donald Trump as a world leader over the past 4 years has been a giant mindfuck. It is such a representation of the way that the world is going, which is that there's really no objective truth anymore. And that, leaders can just blatantly lie and be taken as truth. And so we're seeing this right now, where the truth is now just seeming to be like, what is the truth? Like, what do we believe about coronavirus? What do we believe in the news? What can we rely on? And some people are in a reality and believing things to be true that are vastly different from the reality that we might see as true and believe as true in our own world. And so we're living in two different truths, or multiple different truths, many different truths. And, you know, I mean, that's always been the case, that we've all had our own subjective perspective that varies and taints our view of reality. But now it's almost as though our subjective realities are different, and also our objective realities. It's like the facts that one person is seeing as true are completely different from another set of facts over here. And so we're seeing a lot of division in reality as well. And so this idea of like, what is true? What can I come back to as truth, both subjectively and objectively, and move from that place of truth? Like, how can I locate that and then act from there? I'd like to share a story that's relevant to this topic of being strong enough to stand in your truth and to take action from what is right and integrity and just, even when you are maybe not considering yourself to be strong enough to do so. So I worked for many years for an organization called Outward Bound. Outward Bound was, it's basically an organization designed to take people on wilderness experiences that are challenging and that build personal strength and resilience. Outward Bound was founded by a man named Kurt Hahn. Kurt Hahn was an educator in Nazi Germany. He was Jewish, and fortunately he was exiled from Germany for standing up against the Nazis. And he went to the UK, where he continued his work in education. During the Second World War, when the British sent off their troops to fight, the mariners that were left to do shipping and to mind the boats, which were essential for delivering goods to and from England, they were attacked. So the boats would sink, and then the sailors would be in these little lifeboats, and it would be the old men who were too old to fight in the war, and men who were too young to fight in the war. So it'd be old and young. And what they found was that the old men would survive in the lifeboats because they knew how to cooperate, they knew how to weather difficulties, they were resilient. And the young men would perish because they would be acting out, they would be in despair, they would be selfish, and they were weak, basically. And so Kurt Hahn was enlisted to create a 3-week training for these young men to help them build resilience and to become strong. And that's where Outward Bound was founded from. Kurt Hahn himself had suffered a lot in childhood from weakness and illness. And so my sense of him is that, this is just more from my intuition, is that he was a light worker, and he wasn't strong, and he recognized that in this plane of existence in humanity that you really have to be strong in order to stand up against the forces that we are contending with here. And so it's no surprise that Outward Bound resonated so deeply with me when I did a course when I was 15. And I knew immediately I wanted to work there. I worked there all from basically 18 to 29, and really loved that program. I think that his story and example is really indicative of what's being asked of us right now, which is that we have to be strong, and we have to make uncomfortable choices to protect ourselves and to protect the spaces that we're participating in, and to stand up for what is right in the face of darkness, of and delusion, okay? What is not true. So I'm going to do a mini series here. I'd like to address in a separate video the topic of truth versus delusion and how having healthy self-doubt, okay? Because we don't need more people being evangelically committed to their truth and not actually minding the environment and the truth around them. We also don't want to be doubting ourselves. But we need to have a reasonable self-doubt to accommodate for, maybe I'm not seeing everything here. Maybe there is some delusion. Maybe there is some foggy seeing or thinking here. Let me self-examine. Let me explore. Like, what is true here? How can I pull this apart? So a lot of discernment is being asked of us right now in coming to a center point of what we see as true in the now. I'll also be sharing more resources and exploration of what is involved with noticing and healing our own inner abuser and the part of us that wants to cause others harm or to dominate and be a bully. Now, if you are a white person, okay, if you have light skin, if you're of European descent, or if you have that ancestry, you're automatically a spawn of bullies, okay? We are a product of white supremacy. We live in a white supremacist society, a society that values one dominant culture over others. And so we all have this, Lisa Renee Hall calls it an inner oppressor, but it can be even an inner bully. And if you have been abused, you probably you probably have an inner bully as well. A piece I'd like to highlight here is that not everybody who has been abused has an inner abuser. I don't think that everybody has that part of them. I don't know, but I'm mentioning it, I'm highlighting it here and in this series of videos because it's something that I can see in myself and that I want to address in myself and that's relevant in my life, and that's why I'm sharing it. I must have been maybe 5 years old. I was playing at a friend's house and her younger sister was there. And I remember I went up to her younger sister and I grabbed her head and I squeezed her really hard and I pushed her down. And fortunately, my friend's mom saw me do this. I'd never done anything like that before. That was my first time. And I can remember just the feeling inside of me was of like real anger. I was just getting it out after all the times that I'd been dominated and hurt. And she asked me, the mom asked me, why did you do that? And I just remember this deep feeling of shame and regret and remorse and knowing that wasn't the right thing to do. And to this day, I still have moments where out of me comes an uncontrollable energy of harm. And this has come out in my most intimate relationships at times when I'm triggered, and I'm just even becoming more aware of it now and healing it, because really as I explore that aspect of me, that part of me is so hurt, so wounded, and so abandoned, so sad that it really feels so deeply unlovable that it's lashing out. And I see that exact energy patterning is driving the cold heart of America, of the cold heart of capitalism. It's a divorcing from heart, from well-being. It's a split in the psyche that allows business people to do horrific things in the name of business. Oh, it's just business. What kind of society can say that? What kind of people can be racist? Well, there's a deep divorcing from the heart that has to take place in order for that to happen, and and that division of the psyche is really the hallmark of white supremacy. So we have this work to do. And I speak to people of European ancestry. We have this work to do. And I want to invite you to join me in that work. I think it's the time we're in. I think it's essential we do it. And to be clear, that I'm not inviting you to follow me as a teacher of anti-racism, but rather to join me in the process of doing that work with someone who is a teacher who's devoted themselves to helping us do that work. This next part is the part where, on the topic of, being a victim of abuse, that I wanted to highlight that healing from that is a larger committed process that needs to be engaged with consciously. That's how I see it. And then on the flip side, if you have been on the receiving end of abuse, then, I really think it's about learning to balance these two things, like the strength to stand up and not back down against injustice, to say your piece, to create the boundaries, to say no, to protect your space, but then also to make sure that the tenderness and the gentleness and the essential nature of who you are is honored and intact, so that you can be you. One way this is personally playing out for me is just as I grow my online presence, just having more and more disrespectful comments, people coming into my space, and basically my approach to that at this time is none of it is allowed. So the moment someone's even remotely disrespectful, they get hidden from my channel. So they could be commenting all they want, but I'll never see it. Just really protecting my space, so that this is a space of respect, and making it a priority to hold that container and keep it really pristine. The idea of keeping your space pristine is something definitely that Katie talked about, and also that I've witnessed from Katie in all the years that I did coaching with her, and that I can look back now, because I was only 23, I think, when I did that training. At the time, I didn't understand what she was doing, but now when I look back, I see how she was really so emphasizing all the time the space. So we were doing live workshops as part of the trainings, and we apprentices were partially responsible for really maintaining the space. And we were constantly clearing, cleaning, and also she was doing that with the people as well. She was maintaining her boundaries of the space, and if someone was in violation of the container of the space and the agreements that we had in entering that space together, then she was quite unflinching about having them leave. I mean, it didn't happen very often, because when people entered that space, she had them, there were a list of agreements that people had to make, and it was it was a big thing. We were responsible for making sure people really understood what they were stepping into and agreeing to in the space, and how we would behave together. And so I just really, I really love that. And so that was also kind of an assumption in me mentioning it, was there's a lot of back story to what that means to me, having learned from Katie. Whatever kind of space you are holding, that's the kind of thing that I aim for personally, and I invite you to aim for as well, so that you can keep yourself well. And also, when those energies come into your space, part of it is, doing the inner work of looking inside as well, and just rooting out any aspects of that are being shown to you. So the bottom line of today's video is to encourage you to be strong, and to not hesitate to show the world your strength when it's being challenged, and to redouble your commitment to your higher ideals, whether they be, like for me, love and truth, justice, to make your commitment to your higher ideals your priority right now over connection with others. You know, staying connected in a relationship with someone who is a bully or who is harming you in some way is not serving anybody. And the more that you keep your space and who gets to be included in that space pristine, and in integrity with your higher ideals, the better we're all going to be. And it's going to raise us all up, because if I'm elevating us by speaking my truth and in a loving way, and you are elevating your world to be in alignment with you, then we're all going to benefit from that. And it will be much, much more difficult for injustice to proceed if we are all doing that. And so I will be sharing more resources on this. I look forward to that. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And I love you. Take care.